This episode is the sequel to the TNG episode, The Price, which, believe it or not, was the 4th Ferengi episode ever made. Before this, we had their introduction in The Last Outpost, nothing more need be said about that, and the other Season 1 episode, The Battle, the one with the elaborate plot to get revenge on Picard for what he did to the bad guy's son. These presented the Ferengi in a far more ruthless light than we would come to know them throughout the franchise, without falling back onto the Australopithecine antics of The Last Outpost, anyway. Still, their behavior for the most part was such that you could really plug just about any alien into the story, and it would change little. We didn't see the Ferengi again until near the end of Season 2, and they were for the most part still just violent thugs as they attacked the Enterprise during that war game. Their next appearance is in Season 3 with The Price, which had 2 plots to it. One was that Troy was tense and needed a good humping. The other was a chance to bid on the first supposedly stable wormhole ever discovered. Lots of people are interested, and Damon Goss shows up uninvited to make a bid on behalf of the Ferengi, along with 2 of his underlings. Thanks to various antics, these 2 are trapped on the other side of the galaxy when the other end of the wormhole is shown to be unstable. Well, that's where Voyager steps in.
May not be fixed on this end, but if it's shown up in the same location more than once, it's possible its exit point is constant, and it's wagging around the Delta Quadrant like the tail on a dog.
That's a weird analogy. What worries me is that Parallax taught us that in the world of Voyager, analogies are literal, so they're probably going to create some kind of subspatial dog chow to try to attract the wormhole back. While she tells Harry to scan the area and sort that out, Tuvok says that not only is there an M-class planet nearby, but a sign that someone around here has used a replicator, which doesn't make sense since these people are Bronze Age level at best. And even if you're really smart, you don't go from the spear to conjuring objects out of thin air.
If they've got a replicator, it could mean the wormhole leads to the Alpha Quadrant, and that someone's traveled through it.
Just look at the speed of that deductive reasoning. Batman's got nothing on you, Harry Kim.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, Ensign. But before we indulge in too much speculation, let's see if we can back up your assumptions with some facts.
I'm in the mood to try something novel today. She tells Harry and Chakotay to go down and check it out.
Oh, those many years ago, the people's hearts were sad and low. Then the sages to the city came. They came upon a burning flame.
He's very popular. You can pick up his album if you want to.
From the brim to the dregs it poured, sweet and clear. It was a very good year.
He tries hitting them up for a few donkey turds or whatever the people here use for money.
Oh, but I need money for ointment for my eye.
Must be a problem with the universal translator. I think you meant booze for your mouth. He's driven off by a merchant whom they ignore because the readings came from within that temple, so that's what they're interested in. But before they can head inside, the merchant comes back and says that without wearing their ears, these 2 can be fined. So they trade Tom's shoes for some ears to wear. Thankfully, it's just jewelry, not big foam ears or anything like that. There's a vaguely uncomfortable moment as Chakotay refers to them as a fetish, but thankfully he's using the term to refer to an object that's a symbol of reverence. Not that I'm here to judge, of course. You suck on ears or tug on them while being spanked in a schoolgirl costume. I don't care. You do what your heart desires. Meanwhile, Harry and Torres have finished studying the wormhole.
If you can't bring the ship to the wormhole, bring the wormhole to the ship.
Oh no, you really are going with a dog chow idea, aren't you?
Sort of like using a magnet to move a compass needle.
Okay, that's slightly better. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end we see the top of Voyager open up and reveal a giant magnet with Acme written on the side. Back on the planet, the door to the temple opens and out come the Ferengi, much to Chakotay and Paris' surprise.
Greed is eternal.
Greed is eternal.
Greed is eternal.
Wizards of the Coast has a new slogan. What we have unfolding here is a rather limited imagination. It's no surprise this came from a story from someone who has 2 writing credits to their name and none ever again. You're stuck on a world in the Bronze Age where the locals think that you are divine, and you have a replicator. So what do? If you're a Ferengi, your goal is to be rich. But what does that mean? In this case, they live in a vault with beautiful girls, a toady, and are surrounded by money. Except that money is only valuable because it's what the locals are using as money. What's to stop them from simply replicating money? Now, economically speaking, it would be bad because it would devalue the currency, but what would it matter if all it was doing was sitting around in here anyway? And even if it doesn't, what would that matter to the Ferengi, who seem to be content to drive the local economy into the ground by hoarding all of the money here? Apparently, Voyager thinks that the highest aspiration of the Ferengi is to be Scrooge McDuck, able to swim around in money. And what's more, whatever the locals call it. If the Ferengi are truly to be the worst aspects of Yankee capitalists, as they were described, and as the sages they are viewed effectively as living gods, then this exploitation is peanuts for them. With a replicator and the contents of the Ferengi database on their ship, this seems like the kind of place where an aging Nagus might decide to spend his retirement, building a financial empire on a world of primitives, the way others might make model ships in bottles. And they piss it away by gathering all the local monopoly money in one place for no other reason than to hoard it, like some kind of dragon or something. As an example, when one of the locals come up and begin begging for help for his sandal shop, they don't invest in his shop at predatory rates. They instead sell him a copy of the Rules of Acquisition, because obviously a Bronze Age sandal maker would know how to read. When Chakotay and Paris return to the magic meeting room to explain, they say the locals said that before the sages came, their society was flourishing. Just the kind of thing someone with a sense of economics and all the great financial musings of the Ferengi could take advantage of, to retool the town into a corporation to begin exploiting the countryside for hundreds, if not thousands of miles around. Hell, if I was amoral, I could do this. And I don't have a business degree, just common sense and literacy. Anyway, Tuvok explains the events of the price, more or less, and Janeway says that she won't stand by and allow the Ferengi to exploit the locals. Tuvok points out, however, that the Ferengi are not part of the Federation, so they're not bound to the Prime Directive. And what's more, the Prime Directive does prevent Voyager from getting involved. However, Janeway does a bit of twisted thinking so that she could say the Prime Directive doesn't apply, and thus get involved. It's moments like this that always irritate me. I would normally be fine with her twisting in a knots to break a bad rule. The problem is the willingness to not only stick with the bad rule when people are dying, but to act as if it's virtuous to stick to the rules when people are dying. The message of Voyager seems to be that if Nike had a factory in a third world country and the pollution was killing people, we should do nothing. But if they hired those people to work in their sweatshops, then we must finally take action.
That is a most logical interpretation, Captain.
So the two Ferengi are beamed up while berating their toady, and Janeway confronts Call and Eridor, and saying that she plans to take them back, but Eridor protests. He says that by snatching away their gods, the locals will descend into despair and darkness. It's a bit that's completely over the top in its absurdity, reminiscent of the DS9 episode Prophet Motive. Trek loves their homonyms, when Quark asserts that without greed, civilizations would starve to death. The prophets dismissed this as non sequitur silliness because they're not idiots. Janeway, however, beams the two back down, so draw your own conclusions there. So they need to figure out a way to get the Ferengi to voluntarily leave, so as not to interfere with this culture's natural development. Why, it sounds almost like some kind of directive, one that is of prime importance, doesn't it? So they plan to out-Ferengi the Ferengi, which shouldn't be too hard since they suck so badly at it. Of course, it would be a lot easier, especially given that the plan is to alter Neelix to look like a Ferengi, to tell the people that the sages are departing. But that would mean missing out on Neelix, and if we don't provide more Neelix, how will the audience know that the show hates them? So he arrives claiming to be the Grand Proxy, representative of the Grand Nagus, where they debate about profits and markets as if these people had any idea what those words actually meant, especially because they're continuing to talk about the local currency as if it were of any value to the Ferengi. Yankee capitalists would be looking at this place as a source of raw materials and cheap labor, not tricking them out of their donkey turd currency. So, in the name of the Grand Nagus, Neelix takes the money from them and starts handing it out to people while the Ferengi decide the best thing to do is just kill him. And I'll give them this. It's not another lame caricature. It does seem... what's the word? Stupid. If this actually worked, my mailman would have perished a long time ago in a tragic accident. Just killing the messenger isn't going to solve the problem because, as established, the Grand Nagus can send any number of people through the wormhole now that it's been stabilized. But then, why start thinking now? Let's just roll with it, I guess. Besides, they're plotting to kill Neelix. That's a plan that justifies itself. So Neelix demonstrates those skills that are the reason he demanded to be included in tactical meetings, and promptly screams like a little schoolgirl, even one not getting spanked. They quickly have him dead to rights, and Neelix cowers before them in terror. That's not exaggeration. Neelix is cowering before Ferengi. Wow. I mean, granted, he nearly destroyed the ship with cheese, claimed he had survival skills while leading people to their death. Oh, then there was the time that he lost his own lungs because he couldn't listen to basic instructions, but all of this pales in comparison. Neelix is a pioneer. They should build statues to this kind of incompetence. Neelix, you are like the Steve Jobs of fucking up. So, with that plan shot, they have another run-in with One-Eyed Willie, who will recite the final verse of the Song of the Sages for them so they can figure out an exit strategy. As payment, he wants Chakotay's shoes. I'm starting to think I was wrong about that fetish remark earlier. This is starting to get more foot fetishism in it than a Tarantino film. Fortunately, this does at least bring us closer to resolution, and they decide it's time to complete the prophecy. So, Neelix comes out and declares,
I am the Holy Pilgrim.
You sound less like a religious figure and more like a mascot. I am the Holy Pilgrim, and with lightly sugared shredded wheat, I am part of this complete breakfast. Thanks to Voyager pulling some tricks, the people see portents of the sage's return. Kafar, the abused toady, relishes this and takes the closing of the song literally, ascend to the heaven on wings of fire, by preparing to burn the two Ferengi and Neelix at the stake. Oh, maybe this episode will have a happy ending after all. Chakotay and Tom ask about what's preventing them from beaming out, and the Ferengi decide life is more valuable than their donkey turds and tell them. Tom can't shut it down, so Chakotay shoots the matter-antimatter generator with his phaser. Let me repeat that. You have a device mixing matter and antimatter and decide to blast it until it's broken. The whole damn village should be ascending on wings of fire after that move. Well, this works. They're all beamed up, along with the Ferengi shuttle, which Chakotay is good enough to tell the Ferengi, so they'll know where it is. Chakotay passes them off to a security guard and tells them to put them in secure quarters. However, less than a minute later, the security guard is found with a concussion and the Ferengi have escaped. Oh, come on. Overcome by two Ferengi who haven't done a day's work in at least 7 years, they then override Tuvok's security and get into the shuttle and blast their way out. And to cap it, the Ferengi's attempts to avoid Voyager screw up the wormhole so that both ends are flying all over the place now. You know what? After this episode's long string of incompetence, you deserve it. Beam up whatever dignity you might have left and slink back to the Alpha Quadrant, losers. Post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix moment is him cowering before the Ferengi. There is an image that you can never recover from. Final score for False Prophets is 6 out of 10, above average by Voyager standards. It's an idiot plot, make no mistake, but Joe Menosky's script seems to have grudgingly accepted that fact and decided to try to pass off the idiocy as comedy. I really like the potential of the story, which is why it's so disappointing in how unimaginative it is. Too many creators on Trek came to embrace the Ferengi as one-dimensional beings, so it's no surprise that that's the only way that they can come across here. Hell, even Enterprise managed to do better with the Ferengi, and I can't think of a more damning accusation than that. So yeah, they decided to try to make it a comedy. But in the end, all it means then is that this episode is extremely stupid. You even feel stupid watching it. This episode is like being continuously beaten with a rubber chew toy. It stings, it's annoying, and it's humiliating all at once. All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.